Hi, I'm Claire and this is all about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I am so excited to be talking about this book today because it is my favorite book in the series, as I've mentioned several times on here before. I just love the Marauders storyline, and Remus Lupin is my favorite character in the entire series. I was very happy to be rereading this, and I also was reading this at the time of the Brexit referendum announcement and the days right after that, which were difficult to say the least for me. I'm very interested in politics. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know I've not talked about a whole lot else for the last couple weeks, so it was great to be rereading one of my favorite books of all time, and something that's really a comfort read for me at that time because everything else was a bit weird. But let's get on to my thoughts about this wonderful story. Now, early on in the book, Ron makes a phone call to the Dursleys and asks to talk to Harry, and he messes it up completely because he has no idea how to make a phone call. And a few things struck me there. The first was that Ron obviously calls the Dursleys landline because this book was written in 1999, and I'm just thinking, who has a landline anymore? Maybe families do still have landlines, but I don't actually know anyone who has a landline, I don't think. This is maybe something that couldn't happen in a YA book that was written today. And the other thing is that Harry mentions that Ron probably tells Hermione not to call after his Felitone call because she doesn't try, and he says she would have probably come up with a better excuse. And I was trying to think, what excuse could Hermione have given to talk to Harry? If she couldn't say that she was a friend of his or that she knew him from school, how do you call someone's house and ask to talk to their not really a child who they pretend doesn't exist and or goes to a school for incurably criminal boys? I'm kind of curious what excuse Hermione could have used. I just can't think of anything, so if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments what you think Hermione could have told the Dursleys to talk to Harry on the phone like a normal human being. Now, on to Hermione's cat, Crookshanks. We know Crookshanks is in the book because he serves the plot. However, when she adopts him, Hermione says to Ron and Harry, poor Crookshanks, that witch said he'd been in there for ages, no one wanted him. I wonder, as a pet lover and as someone who has a cat who's a bit difficult sometimes, how much did Hermione adopt Crookshanks because no one else wanted him? As someone who, you know, will go on to defend elf rights and stand up for the downtrodden, etc., how much did Hermione just get this cat? Not because he's cute, not because he's an enormous fluff ball, but just because no one else wanted him. And that makes me like Hermione a whole lot more. Not that I really needed any reasons to love Hermione a lot more than I did, but it seems so obvious now to me that it's probably why she did it, but it didn't occur to me at the time that I first read it, and it is giving me so many feels for Hermione right now. Right after Hermione adopts Crookshanks is the first time that Harry becomes aware that Sirius Black escaped Azkaban to come after him because he overhears Mr. and Mrs. Weasley talking, and the line that jumped at me was when Arthur tells Molly it's been 3 weeks and no one's seen hide nor hair of him. Get it? 'Cause he's a dog? Huh? I remembered that these books were funny, but I didn't remember the incredible level of punnage in those books. There are so many puns. I think it's because I first read those books as a kid, and then when I was reading them in English when I was in high school and university, it was still very much a second language reading where it was quite difficult to get the nuance of it. But now that I'm reading it for the first time, having been in the UK for so long, I'm picking up on so many new puns and double entendres and just meanings of things that I hadn't picked up the first time around, and it is delightful. I'm very happy that it is the case. It also struck me during that very same conversation that Arthur and Molly were having, where Molly says to Arthur that Harry's going to be safe at Hogwarts because Dumbledore is there, that honestly, Arthur and Molly should be the last people on Earth to be making this argument. Harry isn't going to be safer at Hogwarts because Dumbledore is there, in the same way that Ginny wasn't safe from Voldemort at Hogwarts just because Dumbledore was there. Bad things will happen at Hogwarts, and Arthur and Molly should know that, because their baby daughter was possessed by Lord Voldemort for a month and made to hurt people and animals. Ginny was lucky and no one was hurt, but he was trying to kill people. The basilisk definitely wanted blood. We know that because Harry could hear the voice of the basilisk lovingly talking about murder and maiming. Whilst it seems fairly in character for Harry to forget that this thing happened recently to Ginny, who he only views right now as his best friend's kid sister, it seems very, very strange to me that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley would talk about people being in danger at Hogwarts and not mention that they would talk about Harry being safer with Dumbledore and not touch on the fact that Dumbledore being there did not prevent Ginny from going through the trauma that she did. This book is also the first time that we meet the Dementors, and they will be a recurring villain in the rest of the series, but I really like the fact that the first time we meet the Dementors, we meet only one Dementor, and the chapter in which it first appears, chapter 5, is titled The Dementor in the singular, and I found that really interesting from a storytelling point of view. We see the same thing in the opening series of new Doctor Who with the episode Dalek, where in both cases you see this villain for the first time on his own and you see how terrifying he is. On his own, this one Dementor makes Harry faint. He makes Harry remember how his parents died. He makes Harry hear the voice of his mother begging for her own life and for Harry's life as well. And that is a really powerful impact for one single Dementor to be having, in the same way as in the episode Dalek. The Dalek on his own terrifies the Doctor completely. The great thing is, of course, that in the rest of both of these stories, you're going to see more Daleks attacking in one go, and you're going to see way more Dementors attacking in one go. So later, when you see Harry repel a whole bunch of Dementors with his Patronus, you know how impressive that is. You know how much of a feat that is, because you have seen how much damage only one Dementor on his own can bring. But 100 of them? That's just so impressive that Harry can defeat that many of them. I just love that as a storytelling device. I think it works really well. It's very effective. The Dementors are absolutely terrifying. There is one thing in Lupin's first lesson that really struck me this time around. They are, of course, in the teacher's lounge and they're having to defeat this boggart that Lupin found, and it's taking the form of everybody's greatest fears. And most of the kids have fears that are kind of storybook monsters. A giant spider, a hand crawling on its own, a banshee. All of these are pretty much what you would expect a kid to be afraid of, but Harry and Neville are afraid of different things. And it really struck me this time around when I was rereading it that all of the fears that everybody else has are fairly childish fears. Big monsters, things that don't really belong in the real world. And even though this is a magical world that actually has banshees and giant spiders, they are still not things that belong to the everyday life. Harry is afraid of fear. He's afraid of the trauma that is in his past that he can hear when the Dementors come near him. And then on the other hand, you have Neville, who is afraid of Professor Snape. That is literally an everyday fear to him because he has to go to school with this person who clearly has traumatized him so much by being such a bully that he's now become his greatest fear. It concerns me a lot that this is a school in which apparently everybody is safe because Dumbledore is there, but it's still possible for Snape to go around bullying all of his students and insulting them. I have to say, when I was reading the books as they were coming out, I was a massive Snape fangirl. I used to be extremely taken with the idea of Snape as this character who's made some wrong choices in his youth, and then he saw where he was going wrong and he joined the resistance and Dumbledore. And I guess at the time it was a bit more difficult for me to understand that Snape could very well be in the Order and on Dumbledore's side and not necessarily be made completely a good guy by this fact, and he still could and should be criticized for the awful way he behaves as a teacher when he's managing to terrify one of his students enough that he is the thing, Neville Longbottom, a boy who has lost his parents to the worst form of torture that Bellatrix Lestrange could come up with. That is who is terrified of Snape. I mean, you'd think, if anything, Neville would be more frightened of Bellatrix, but no, he's scared of Snape, and that's just so wrong. The more I reread these, the more I'm so angry at Dumbledore for letting Snape teach at the school. Anyway, that's one teaching appointment I remain unimpressed with, but two new teaching appointments that I was very happy with were, of course, Hagrid as Care of Magical Creatures teacher, just in time for Ron and Hermione and Harry to be taking lessons with him, and of course my boy Remus Lupin, who is my favourite character in the whole series, and I love him a lot, even though I still wish they could have cast Ewan McGregor as Remus. It was never in discussion as far as I know with the studios or whatever. It was just my personal headcanon. The thing about Remus and Hagrid as teachers that never really struck a chord with me before, because I guess I was too young, is how significant it is for both of them to finally have a job that they can do, where they can be accepted, where they can have a certain amount of stability. Both of them are people who have been rejected by the wizarding world for what they are and what the wizarding world thinks it says about them. The idea of these two wizards who are good men who have been sidelined their entire lives for things outside of their control, things that were done to them by dark wizards when they were only young, but things that have caused them prejudice their entire lives. So for them to be recognized for their real worth and their real abilities, for them to be offered the chance to focus on what they can do as opposed to what they can't do, I just thought that was incredibly beautiful, and I found it a lot more moving than I expected it to. Another thing that kind of broke my heart a little bit was how cautious and secretive Hermione is this entire book. Of course, there's her argument with Ron over Crookshanks allegedly eating Scabbers, and that is something that really puts a strain on her that year, but it's not just that she's arguing with Ron. There's also the whole business with the Time Turner, the fact that she puts herself under extraordinary pressure to do all these extra classes, and I wonder if that's just her trying to cover all her bases, or if she's trying to prove something. Is she trying to prove something to herself or to others? Why is she putting herself under so much strain? And then I realized when we find out that she's been keeping Lupin's secret the whole time, she says of herself that she's not so clever, that she should have known, that she should have told somebody about Lupin. And it struck me that it's probably a direct consequence of what happened with Lockhart the previous year. Hermione saw this supposedly badass wizard with all of his tales of accomplishments, and he was very pretty as well, and she just trusted in that, and she saw her admiration for him shattered by the fact that he was a complete fraud and she should have never trusted him. And it seems to me like that's a huge factor in the way that Hermione's behaving this year. She's way more cautious now. She reserves her judgment. She sees Trelawney making all these predictions, she sees Lupin being ill all the time, and she makes up her own mind what she thinks about that. She decides after a while that on the evidence of what she's seen, Trelawney's class is a joke, and so she leaves. She makes her own decision instead of listening to an authority figure who says, you can't succeed in this class because you don't have the inner eye. And in the case of Lupin, she's figured out this massive secret about him, and she doesn't even go to Dumbledore or McGonagall, which you would think would be the first port of call for Hermione in, say, Philosopher's Stone or Chamber of Secret. If she'd figured out something like that, she would tell a teacher immediately, but having seen what a teacher can be, then she decides to reserve her judgment and to keep this information for herself unless and until she sees any evidence that there's something wrong about Professor Lupin. But you can see this entirely new attitude to assessing the world around her, where she has learned to not be so trusting anymore, and she will continue to be that assessing eye for the books to come. The only thing that really truly annoys me in this book, in this fabulous, wonderful book that I love, is the fact that there are several lines that make it sound like Sirius had a trial, but at the same time Sirius can't have had a trial, because otherwise the thing with Pettigrew and being animagi would have come out a lot earlier and changed a lot of things. And we're not told specifically in this book whether Sirius has a trial or not. I'm pretty sure it's addressed later in the series. For me, when I read through that now, I'm just so angry that there doesn't seem to have been a trial. We know there's been some form of sentencing or a conviction because Snape tells Harry that he's been found out of bounds with a convicted murderer and a werewolf, and Dumbledore tells Harry that he himself gave evidence to the Ministry that Sirius had been Lily and James's secret keeper, and so they need some kind of witness or Pettigrew's body in order to overturn Sirius's sentence. There's clearly been something, but it doesn't seem like that thing included Sirius having a say. And to me, as an adult in the real world where we have human rights and things like that, it seems very, very strange that this could have happened, that Sirius could have been condemned to life in Azkaban without a trial. That seems so strange and wrong, but at the same time it's the magical world and they've done weirder stuff than that. I know it serves the plot and I know it gives us a wonderful book, but God, I just want there to have been a trial so that Sirius didn't have to go through all of this. And now I really want to go and find some fanfic where there's a trial and it gets sorted out and Sirius gets to, you know, not spend his entire adult life in prison. Anyway, if you have any fanfic recommendation, particularly Remus Sirius, because obviously, please leave that in the comments below. I also did the fanfiction tag recently if you're interested. I also recently did the fanfiction tag, so I will link that in the description box below if you're interested in seeing that video. And also, if you enjoy Harry Potter and really in-depth discussions of the book, then I would very much recommend the Oh Witch Please podcast, which is just fabulous and hilarious and very much more in-depth than these little videos that I'm doing, so I will also leave a link for that in the description box. So that was it for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, my beautiful favorite Harry Potter book. Let me know in the comments below which of the series is your favorite. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I will see you very soon for a discussion of Goblet of Fire. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out the sidebar right here for more videos, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for new videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.